How can one anniversary dinner, meant for celebration, become the spark for a 72-hour unraveling of everything I thought I controlled? I'm Lysandra Vey, 34 years old, and I coordinate non-profit events for a living. I thought I had life figured out: marriage, career, social status. But as I sit here now, divorce papers crumpled in my lap, I realize how wrong I was. It started 3 days ago at Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant where Jonah and I celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary. The candlelit ambiance was perfect, the wine expensive, and I felt radiant in my new black dress. But something was missing, that spark, that excitement I craved. "You look beautiful tonight," Jonah said across the table, his voice steady as always. He's 36, a high school science teacher with kind eyes and graying temples. Reserved, methodical, the type who thinks before he speaks. "Thank you," I replied, but my attention had already drifted to Felix Rudd at the bar. Felix serves on our non-profits board, charming, confident, everything I felt Jonah wasn't anymore. When Felix noticed me and raised his glass in acknowledgement, I felt that familiar flutter of validation. "Isn't that Felix from your work?" Jonah asked, following my gaze. "Yes, what a coincidence," I said, waving Felix over. "Felix, come say hello." Felix approached with his trademark smile, expensive suit perfectly tailored. "Lysandra, you look stunning. And Jonah, good to see you again." The conversation started innocently enough: work updates, board meeting schedules. But as Felix sat beside me, I felt his hand brush against my thigh under the table. Instead of pulling away, I laughed at his jokes, leaned closer during his stories, and let his fingers linger on my arm when he made a point. Jonah's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He never caused scenes, never raised his voice. Sometimes I wished he would. "We should do this more often," Felix said, his hand now resting on my knee under the tablecloth. "All of us, I mean." "Absolutely," I agreed, placing my hand over his briefly. "Life's too short not to enjoy good company." The flash of a camera phone from a nearby table caught my attention. A co-worker from the non-profit, Nate, was dining with friends and had apparently captured our intimate moment. He grinned and gave me a thumbs up. "Great photo op," I called out, not caring who heard. "Make sure you tag me." Jonah's face had gone pale. "Lysandra, maybe we should..." "Should what? Have fun? Enjoy ourselves?" I interrupted, my voice carrying across the restaurant. "This is exactly what we needed. Some excitement." Felix squeezed my hand. "You're absolutely right. Life's about making memories." As we prepared to leave, I posed for another photo with Felix, his arm around my waist, both of us laughing. Jonah stood apart, car keys in hand, waiting silently. The drive home was tense. Jonah gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. "Are you going to sulk all night?" I asked, checking my phone. Nate had already posted the photos with captions like, "Anniversary night done right," and "Some people know how to have fun." "I'm not sulking," Jonah replied quietly. "I'm thinking." "About what?" "How to have a good time. Because Felix certainly knows how to make people feel special." Jonah pulled into our apartment building's garage. "Is that what this is about? Feeling special?" "Maybe it is. When's the last time you made me feel like the most important person in the room?" He turned off the engine and looked at me. "I thought that's what tonight was supposed to be about. Us." "It was about us. All of us. Friends, fun, connection. That's what modern marriages need, not this suffocating possessiveness." Inside our high-rise apartment, the tension followed us. Jonah disappeared into his home office, while I posted the photos on social media, with captions like, "Best anniversary ever," and "Surrounded by amazing people who know how to celebrate life." The likes and comments poured in immediately. Marina, my closest friend, wrote, "You look incredible, living your best life." Felix commented with fire emojis. Even some of Jonah's teacher colleagues liked the posts. But there were other comments too. Aunt Lydia, Jonah's stern 55-year-old aunt, wrote, "Interesting anniversary choice." My mother Rosa's comment was more direct. "Where's your husband in these photos?" I deleted the negative comments and highlighted the positive ones. This was about confidence, about refusing to be diminished by small-minded people who didn't understand modern relationships. From the office, I could hear Jonah's printer running and the sound of drawers opening and closing. When I peeked in, he was organizing papers into color-coded folders, his laptop open to what looked like a spreadsheet. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Just organizing some household paperwork," he replied without looking up. Nothing important, but something felt different. The desk drawers that were usually unlocked now had small padlocks. His calendar, which he'd always shared with me, was now password-protected on his phone. As I got ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a calendar alert I didn't remember setting. "Meeting, personal, tomorrow, 3 p.m. "Did you add something to my calendar?" I called out. "No," Jonah replied from the office. "Must be a glitch." I tried to delete the alert, but it wouldn't disappear. Technology problems. Just what I needed after a perfect evening. The next morning, Jonah was already gone when I woke up. He'd left coffee and toast, as always, but something felt different. The apartment seemed colder, more sterile. Even our 7-year-old daughter Maya seemed subdued at breakfast. "Is Daddy mad?" she asked, pushing cereal around her bowl. "Why would you think that?" I replied, checking my phone for new likes and comments. He was very quiet this morning, and he locked his office door. "Daddy's just busy with work stuff, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." But as I drove Maya to school and headed to the non-profit office, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. The calendar alert was still there, unchanged, like a countdown timer I couldn't control. At work, Nate greeted me with a huge grin. "Girl, you broke the internet last night. Those photos are everywhere." "What do you mean everywhere?" He showed me his phone. The restaurant photos had been shared dozens of times across social media platforms. The non-profit's donors, board members, and community partners were all seeing images of me draped over Felix, while my husband stood alone in the background. "This is amazing publicity for the organization," I said, trying to sound confident. "It shows we're dynamic, engaging people." "Absolutely," Nate agreed, though some of the older donors might not get it. Mrs. Henderson from the Education Fund called this morning asking about appropriate professional conduct. My stomach tightened. Mrs. Henderson controlled a significant portion of our funding. "What did you tell her?" "That you're a vibrant modern woman who knows how to network and build relationships, but maybe tone it down just a tiny bit, for the sake of the organization." I spent the morning dealing with emails and calls from board members, donors, and colleagues. Most were supportive, but there was an undercurrent of concern I couldn't ignore. By lunch, our HR director had scheduled a meeting for the following day. Felix texted around noon. "Coffee this afternoon? I can't stop thinking about last night." I agreed to meet him at his favorite cafe downtown. The calendar alert was still there. Meeting, personal, 3 p.m. Exactly when I'd be with Felix. Coincidence? At the cafe, Felix was waiting with 2 lattes and that charming smile. "You look incredible, as always." "Thank you. Last night was exactly what I needed." "Your husband seemed less enthusiastic," Felix observed, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "Jonah's always been reserved. Sometimes I think he forgets we're supposed to be partners, not roommates." "A woman like you deserves to feel appreciated every day," Felix said, his fingers intertwining with mine. "You're vibrant, successful, beautiful. Any man would be lucky to have your attention." The validation felt like warm honey in my veins. This was what I'd been missing. Someone who saw my worth, who made me feel alive. We talked for 2 hours about work, life, dreams. Felix shared stories about his travels, his ambitions, his appreciation for complex, intelligent women. When he walked me to my car, He kissed my cheek and whispered, "This doesn't have to end here." Driving home, I felt more alive than I had in months. The calendar alert had finally disappeared, replaced by a new one. Document review, tomorrow, 4 p.m. At home, Jonah was helping Maya with homework at the kitchen table. He looked up when I entered, his expression unreadable. "How was your day?" he asked. "Productive. Lots of meetings, networking. The usual." "I see. Maya, why don't you finish this in your room? Mommy and I need to talk." After Maya left, Jonah stood and faced me. "We need to discuss what happened last night." "What's to discuss?" "We had dinner, we socialized, we enjoyed ourselves. Isn't that what couples do? Is that what you call it? Because from where I sat, it looked like you were more interested in Felix than in celebrating our anniversary." I felt the familiar surge of defensive anger. "That's ridiculous. Felix is a colleague, a friend. I'm allowed to have friends, Jonah. I'm allowed to feel good about myself." "Of course you are, but there are boundaries in marriage, Lysandra. Lines that shouldn't be crossed." "What lines? Talking to people, laughing, having a good time. You're being paranoid." Jonah was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Maybe I am, but I know what I saw, and I know how it made me feel." "How it made you feel? What about how I feel? When's the last time you made me feel special, desired, important?" Felix managed it in one evening. "So, this is my fault." "This isn't anyone's fault. It's about growth, about not letting our marriage become stagnant. Modern relationships require trust, freedom, space to be ourselves." Jonah nodded slowly. "I see. And what does that look like exactly?" "It looks like supporting each other's friendships, not being possessive or controlling. It looks like confidence instead of insecurity." "Interesting perspective," he said, then returned to his office. Later that evening, I heard the printer running again. When I tried the office door, it was locked. The next morning brought a storm I hadn't anticipated. My phone was buzzing non-stop with notifications, calls, and messages. The anniversary photos hadn't just gone viral within our social circle. They'd spread across the entire non-profit community and beyond. "Lysandra, we need to talk immediately," came the text from Jennifer Walsh, our HR director. At the office, the atmosphere was electric with whispered conversations that stopped whenever I walked by. Nate approached with his usual grin, but it seemed forced. "So, you're officially famous now," he said. The photos hit the non-profit newsletter, the community board forums, even the local business journal's social media roundup. My heart sank. "What are they saying?" "Mixed reactions. Some people think you're refreshingly authentic. Others are questioning professional boundaries. And your husband, well, he's become sort of a sympathetic figure online." "Sympathetic figure?" Nate showed me his phone. Someone had created a meme using the restaurant photo, with Jonah standing alone in the background, while Felix and I embraced in the foreground. The caption read, "When you plan the perfect anniversary dinner, but she has other plans." The image had been shared hundreds of times, with comments ranging from supportive, "Poor guy deserves better," to critical, "This is why marriage is dying," to cruel, "Imagine being this publicly humiliated." "This is ridiculous," I said, my voice shaking. "It's just a photo. People are reading way too much into it." "Maybe," Nate agreed. "But perception is reality in our business. Donors don't like drama." The HR meeting was worse than I'd expected. Jennifer sat across from me with a thick folder and a concerned expression. "Lysandra, I've received multiple calls about your conduct at the anniversary dinner. Board members, donors, community partners, everyone's talking about it." "Talking about what exactly?" "Having dinner with colleagues." "The photos suggest something more than professional networking. Felix Rudd is married, you're married, and the optics are problematic for our organization." "Optics? I'm being judged based on optics?" Jennifer leaned forward. "You're being judged based on behavior that reflects on this organization." We depend on community trust and support. When our staff become the subject of gossip and speculation, it affects our mission. So what are you saying? I'm saying you need to be more careful about public appearances, and I strongly recommend limiting your interactions with Felix outside of official board business. I left the meeting feeling humiliated and angry. This was exactly the kind of small-minded thinking that held women back. I was being punished for confidence, for refusing to shrink into the background like some Victorian wife. At lunch, I met Felix at our usual cafe. He seemed less enthusiastic than the day before, checking his phone frequently and avoiding eye contact. "Everything okay?" I asked. "My wife saw the photos," he admitted. "She's not happy." "What did you tell her?" "That we're colleagues, that it was innocent networking, but she's demanding I step back from any non-essential contact with you." I felt a surge of disappointment and anger. "So, you're going to let her control your friendships?" "It's complicated, Lysandra. My marriage, my kids. I have to consider the bigger picture." "What about what we talked about yesterday? About appreciating complex, intelligent women?" Felix looked uncomfortable. "I do appreciate you, but maybe we should keep things strictly professional for a while. Let the gossip die down." Driving back to work, I felt betrayed and abandoned. First Jonah's paranoid suspicions, then HR's prudish concerns, now Felix's cowardly retreat. Everyone was overreacting to a simple display of friendship and confidence. I decided to take control of the narrative. That afternoon, I posted a lengthy social media statement. "I'm disappointed but not surprised by the small-minded reactions to photos of me enjoying dinner with friends and colleagues. In 2023, women should be free to be confident, social, and authentic without being subjected to Victorian-era judgment. My marriage is strong because it's built on trust and mutual respect, not possessiveness and insecurity. I refuse to dim my light to make others comfortable." Modern marriage, genre women supporting, women, or authentic living. The post generated immediate responses. Marina and several other friends shared it with supportive comments, but there were critics too. People questioning my judgment, my priorities, my respect for marriage vows. My mother Rosa called within an hour. "Lysandra, what are you doing? These photos, this post, people are talking." "Let them talk, Mom. I'm not going to apologize for being myself." "Being yourself? You're a married woman with a child. There are responsibilities that come with that." "Responsibilities like what? Becoming invisible? Pretending I don't exist outside of my roles as wife and mother?" "Responsibilities like considering how your actions affect your family." That poor man looked humiliated in those photos. "Jonah is fine. He's just adjusting to having a wife who refuses to be diminished." Rosa was quiet for a moment. "Mija, I've been married for 35 years. I know the difference between confidence and selfishness. What you're doing, this isn't confidence." I hung up, frustrated by everyone's inability to understand. This was about empowerment, about refusing to accept the limitations society placed on married women. That evening, Jonah was in his office again when I got home. The printer was running constantly now, and I could hear him on phone calls that stopped whenever I approached the door. "What's all the printing about?" I asked when he finally emerged for dinner. "Just work stuff. Lesson plans, grade sheets, nothing interesting." But I'd noticed other changes too. Our shared credit card statements were now being delivered to a P.O. box I didn't know about. Bank statements had stopped arriving at the house entirely. Even our daughter Maya seemed to sense the shift. "Daddy's been asking me lots of questions," she mentioned while I tucked her into bed. "What kind of questions?" "About school, about who picks me up, about where we go on weekends. And he's been taking pictures of my drawings." "Your drawings?" Maya showed me her latest artwork, a family portrait with 3 stick figures. Jonah was drawn much smaller than usual, standing far from Felix and me, who were drawn holding hands with big smiles. Why did you draw Daddy so small, sweetheart? Because he looks sad and tiny now, and you and the man from your work look happy. My stomach churned. Even our 7-year-old was picking up on tensions I thought we'd been hiding. Later that night, I tried to access Jonah's computer to see what he was working on so intensively. But everything was password protected now. His laptop, his phone, even his email account that we used to share. My phone buzzed with another calendar alert I hadn't set. Paper drop, 16:05 tomorrow. Jonah, are you adding things to my calendar? I called out. No, he replied from the office. Why would I do that? I tried to delete the alert, but like the previous ones, it wouldn't disappear. When I tried to trace its origin, the system showed it had been created from Jonah's computer, but he denied any knowledge of it. The next morning brought more bad news. Felix texted to cancel our usual coffee meeting, citing schedule conflicts. 2 board members called to express concerns about recent publicity. Even Marina seemed less enthusiastic in her responses to my messages. At work, the atmosphere had shifted noticeably. Conversation stopped when I entered rooms. Colleagues who usually sought my input on projects were handling things independently. Nate, who'd been encouraging the drama, now seemed uncomfortable with the attention it was drawing to our organization. Maybe it's time to let this blow over, he suggested. Take a lower profile for a few weeks. Lower profile? I haven't done anything wrong. I know that, and you know that, but perception is everything in non-profit work. Donors are conservative, board members are traditional. They don't understand modern relationship dynamics. I spent the day fighting a growing sense of isolation. The validation I'd craved was turning into judgment. The attention I'd enjoyed was becoming scrutiny. Even Felix, who'd seemed so supportive, was now avoiding me entirely. That evening, I found Jonah in the kitchen making dinner, something he'd been doing more frequently lately. We need to talk, I said. About what? About these calendar alerts appearing on my phone, about you locking your office, about whatever you're planning. Jonah looked at me calmly. I'm not planning anything, Lysandra. I'm just organizing our household affairs, making sure everything is properly documented. Documented for what? For whatever comes next. The phrase sent a chill through me. What do you mean, whatever comes next? I mean that actions have consequences, choices have results, and I want to make sure I'm prepared for any eventuality. Are you threatening me? I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply being methodical about protecting what matters to me. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Jonah slept peacefully beside me. The calendar alert was still there. Paper drop, 16:05 tomorrow. And I had a growing suspicion that tomorrow would bring changes I wasn't prepared for. The printer in his office ran until nearly midnight. Thursday morning arrived with an ominous weight I couldn't shake. The calendar alert, paper drop, 16:05 tomorrow, had now changed to paper drop, 16:05 today, and still wouldn't delete no matter what I tried. Jonah was already gone when I woke up, but he'd left coffee and breakfast as usual. Maya seemed more withdrawn than ever, barely speaking during our drive to school. Daddy asked me not to tell you something, she said as we pulled up to the school. My heart stopped. What did he ask you not to tell me? That he's picking me up today instead of you. He said it was a surprise. What kind of surprise? I don't know, but he seemed sad when he said it. At work, the atmosphere had grown even more tense. Jennifer from HR called me into another meeting first thing. Lysandra, I'm afraid we have a problem. Mrs. Henderson from the Education Fund is threatening to pull her donation. She's citing concerns about organizational leadership and professional conduct. This is insane. I had dinner with a colleague. That's it. The photos suggest otherwise. And your social media response made things worse. You're entitled to your opinions about modern marriage, but when they affect our funding, they become an organizational issue. So what are you saying? I'm saying you need to consider taking a leave of absence until this blows over. Let things cool down. Let people forget. A leave of absence? You're punishing me for being confident and social. I'm trying to protect the organization and your career. This attention isn't helping anyone. I left the meeting furious and humiliated. A leave of absence was essentially admission of guilt for crimes I hadn't committed. I'd done nothing but refuse to be diminished by small-minded people who couldn't handle a modern woman's confidence. Felix hadn't responded to any of my messages in 2 days. When I called his office, his assistant said he was unavailable and would return my call later, but he never did. Marina finally responded to my texts around lunch. Hey, maybe we should talk in person. Things are getting pretty intense online. We met at a quiet restaurant away from our usual spots. Marina looked uncomfortable from the moment she sat down. Lysandra, I need to be honest with you. People are talking, and not in a good way. What people? Everyone. Our mutual friends, people from work, even some of my colleagues who don't know you personally. The photos, your social media posts, they're making you look bad. Making me look bad for what? Having friends, enjoying myself, for publicly humiliating your husband, for flirting with a married man in front of cameras, for defending it all as modern marriage when it just looks like cheating. The word hit me like a slap. Cheating? I haven't cheated on anyone. Felix and I are friends. We talk, we laugh, we support each other. That's not cheating. Marina looked skeptical. The photos show his hands all over you while your husband stands alone in the background. Your social media is full of pictures with Felix and none with Jonah. You're defending modern marriage while acting like you're single. I'm defending my right to have friendships and feel good about myself. Jonah is secure enough in our relationship to trust me. Is he? Because from the outside, it looks like he's being systematically humiliated while you parade around with another man. I felt tears of frustration building. You're supposed to be my friend. You're supposed to support me. I am supporting you. That's why I'm telling you the truth. This path you're on, it's not going to end well. People are choosing sides, and most of them are choosing Jonah's. Choosing sides? This isn't a war. Isn't it? Because it's starting to feel like one. That afternoon, I received a group text from several mutual friends uninviting me from a weekend gathering. The message was polite but clear. Given recent events, we think it's best to keep things small and drama-free. By 3 p.m., I was desperate for validation. I drove to Felix's office building and waited in the lobby until he appeared. His face showed shock and dismay when he saw me. Lysandra, what are you doing here? You haven't returned my calls. I needed to see you. This isn't a good idea. People are watching, talking. My wife is already suspicious. So what? Let them talk. Let her be suspicious. We know the truth. Felix looked around nervously. The truth is that I'm married. You're married. And this attention is destroying both our reputations. I can't be seen with you anymore. Can't be seen with me? What am I, some kind of pariah? You're a beautiful, intelligent woman who's making very poor choices, and I can't be part of those choices anymore. He walked away, leaving me standing alone in the lobby while security guards watched with obvious interest. I felt exposed, abandoned, humiliated in a way I'd never experienced before. At 4:05 p.m., exactly 1 hour before the mysterious paper drop, I received a text from Jonah. Maya is safe with me. Don't worry about pickup today. Something in the phrasing sent alarm bells ringing. I called him immediately. Where are you? Where's Maya? We're fine. We're just spending some time together. What does that mean? Where are you spending time together? Somewhere safe. Somewhere quiet. Don't worry about us. Jonah, you're scaring me. What's happening at 4:05? There was a long pause. How do you know about 4:05? The calendar alerts. They've been appearing on my phone for days. You've been planning something. I've been preparing for something. There's a difference. Preparing for what? for the consequences of choices, for the results of actions, for whatever comes next. The line went dead. I tried calling back, but his phone went straight to voicemail. At exactly 4:05 p.m., I was sitting in my car outside Maya's school when a man in a business suit approached my window. He was carrying a manila envelope and a clipboard. "Are you Lysandra Vey?" "Yes." "I'm authorized to serve you with these documents. Please sign here acknowledging receipt." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. The first page read, "Petition for dissolution of marriage, uncontested with temporary orders." The papers were comprehensive and detailed. Jonah was filing for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences. Temporary orders were already in place, giving him primary custody of Maya, control of their joint accounts, and exclusive use of their apartment. I was granted supervised visitation and access to a separate account containing exactly enough money for basic living expenses. The documentation was extensive: photos from the restaurant, screenshots of social media posts, witness statements from colleagues and family members, even copies of text messages between Felix and me that I didn't remember being particularly intimate but looked damning when compiled together. Everything was dated, time-stamped, and legally formatted. This wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a carefully planned legal strategy that had been in development for days. My phone rang. It was Jonah. "Did you receive the papers?" "How could you do this? How could you plan this behind my back?" "I didn't plan this, Lysandra. You did. Every choice you made, every boundary you crossed, every time you chose Felix over our family, you planned this." "I never chose Felix over our family. He's just a friend whose hands were all over you at our anniversary dinner. A friend you meet for secret coffee dates. A friend you defend more passionately than you defend your own husband." "That's not true." "It's all documented, Lysandra. Photos, messages, witness statements, financial records showing where you've been spending time and money. It's all there in black and white." I flipped through the papers with growing horror. He'd been collecting evidence for days, maybe weeks. Bank records showing charges at restaurants where I'd met Felix. Cell phone data showing my location during our coffee meetings. Even social media analytics showing how much time I spent responding to Felix's comments versus Jonah's. "You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself and our daughter. When someone shows you who they are, you believe them. And you've shown me very clearly who you are." "Where's Maya? I want to see my daughter." "Maya is safe. She's with people who love her and put her needs first. You can see her this weekend under the supervised visitation schedule outlined in the temporary orders." "Supervised visitation? I'm her mother." "You're a mother who's been so focused on getting attention from other men that you haven't noticed your daughter drawing pictures of how small and sad her father looks. You're a mother who's been prioritizing validation from a colleague over stability for her child." The accusation hit me like a physical blow because I couldn't entirely deny it. Maya's drawings, her questions about why Daddy looks sad, her confusion about the tension in our house. I'd been so focused on my own needs that I'd missed the signs of how this was affecting her. "This is temporary," I said, trying to sound confident. "I'll fight this. I'll get a lawyer." "You can certainly try, but everything in those papers is factual and documented. I haven't lied about anything, haven't exaggerated anything. I've simply compiled evidence of choices you made freely and publicly." "Evidence of what? Having friends, being social, feeling good about myself?" "Evidence of prioritizing another man over your husband and child. Evidence of public behavior that embarrassed our family and damaged your professional reputation. Evidence of choices that showed where your real priorities lie." I sat in my car, reading through the papers as the afternoon sun faded. The legal language was cold and clinical, but the evidence was overwhelming. Photos of Felix and me that I'd thought looked friendly now appeared intimate and inappropriate. Text messages I'd considered harmless seemed flirtatious and secretive. Social media posts I'd meant as empowering came across as defensive and delusional. Most damaging were the witness statements, colleagues describing my behavior at work events, family members expressing concern about my priorities, even Maya's teacher noting that she'd seemed anxious and distracted lately, asking questions about whether her parents still loved each other. My phone buzzed with notifications. The divorce filing was apparently public record, and word was already spreading through our social networks. The same people who'd been gossiping about the anniversary photos were now dissecting the legal documents with forensic precision. Felix texted, "I heard about the divorce. I'm sorry this happened. My wife and I think it's best if we don't communicate anymore." Even in my moment of crisis, he was protecting himself and distancing himself from the consequences of our friendship. I drove to our apartment building, but the security guard informed me that my access card had been deactivated. I could retrieve personal belongings under supervision, but I could no longer enter freely. Standing on the sidewalk outside the building, where I'd lived for 5 years, holding divorce papers that detailed the systematic destruction of my marriage, I finally understood what Jonah had meant about consequences and choices. The calendar alert on my phone had changed again. New chapter begins now. This time, when I tried to delete it, it disappeared immediately. Friday morning found me in a hotel room I couldn't afford, staring at legal documents I still couldn't quite believe were real. The temporary orders were comprehensive and immediate. I had been effectively locked out of my own life overnight. My phone had been buzzing since dawn, with calls from reporters, colleagues, and acquaintances who'd heard about the divorce filing. The non-profit world was small, and scandal travelled fast. Jennifer from HR called at 8 a.m. sharp. "Lysandra, given recent developments, the board has decided you should take immediate leave. The media attention is becoming unmanageable." Media attention? The divorce filing mentioned your workplace behavior and relationships with board members. Local business journals are picking up the story. We can't have that kind of scrutiny while we're in the middle of our annual fundraising campaign. So you're firing me? We're placing you on administrative leave pending resolution of your personal situation. Your position will be held for 6 months, but you can't return to work until this is settled. I hung up feeling completely untethered. No job, no home, no access to my daughter, and a bank account with just enough money to survive for a few weeks. My mother called next. "Mija, I saw the news online." "What happened?" "Jonah happened. He's been planning this for days, collecting evidence, building a case. He blindsided me." "Blindsided you?" "Lysandra, those photos were everywhere. Everyone could see what was happening except you." "Nothing was happening. Felix and I were friends. We talked, we laughed, we supported each other. That's not a crime." "It's not a crime, but it's not marriage either. When you choose to spend your emotional energy on another man, your husband notices. When you defend that man more passionately than you defend your marriage, people notice." "I was defending my right to have friendships." "You were defending your right to humiliate your husband publicly while pursuing another woman's husband, and now you're surprised that there are consequences." I hung up on her too. Everyone was against me. Everyone was taking Jonah's side without understanding my perspective. I was being punished for refusing to be diminished, for insisting on my right to feel valued and appreciated. Around noon, I decided to go to Maya's school. The temporary orders allowed supervised visitation, but surely I could at least see my daughter, talk to her, explain that Mommy was okay. The school secretary looked uncomfortable when I approached. "Mrs. Vey, I'm sorry, but we have instructions that Maya can only be released to her father or designated guardians." "I'm her mother. I'm not trying to take her anywhere. I just want to see her." "I understand, but we have to follow the court orders. Mr. Vey provided documentation this morning." Through the office window, I could see Maya in the playground with her class. She looked small and confused, not participating in the games like usual. When she spotted me through the glass, her face lit up, and she started running toward the building. "Mommy!" she called out, but her teacher quickly intercepted her, speaking quietly and redirecting her back to the group. Watching my daughter's confused expression as she was led away from me was the most heartbreaking moment of my life. I sat in my car crying for 20 minutes before driving away. That afternoon, I met with a divorce attorney I'd found online. David Chen was young and aggressive, exactly what I thought I needed. "I've reviewed the documents your husband filed," he said, spreading the papers across his desk. "I have to be honest, this is a very strong case he's built." "Strong how? I didn't do anything illegal." "You didn't do anything illegal, but you did engage in behavior that could be construed as emotional adultery. The evidence is extensive and well documented." "Emotional adultery? That's not even a real thing." "It's very real in family court. When one spouse forms an intimate emotional connection with someone outside the marriage, especially when it's public and humiliating to the other spouse, judges take it seriously." David showed me the evidence Jonah had compiled. It was more extensive than I'd realized. Bank records showing charges at restaurants where I'd met Felix during times I'd told Jonah I was working late. Cell phone records showing hundreds of texts between Felix and me. Social media analytics showing that I'd liked and commented on Felix's posts more frequently than my own husband's. "The most damaging evidence is the pattern of deception," David explained. "Secret meetings, deleted messages, lies about your whereabouts. Even if the relationship was technically platonic, the behavior suggests someone who was prioritizing another relationship over their marriage." "So, what are my options?" "You can fight it, but it will be expensive and you'll probably lose. The temporary orders are reasonable. You get visitation, spousal support, and a fair division of assets. Fighting for more will likely result in getting less." "What about custody? Maya is my daughter." "The custody arrangement is based on stability and best interests of the child. Your husband has a stable job, a stable home, and hasn't been involved in any public scandals. You're currently unemployed, living in a hotel, and dealing with professional and personal reputation issues." "That's not fair. Those reputation issues aren't my fault." "Aren't they? You made choices that led to public scrutiny. You prioritized a relationship that damaged your marriage and career. Fair or not, those are the consequences you're dealing with." I left the attorney's office feeling more hopeless than ever. Even my own lawyer was essentially telling me that I'd brought this on myself. That evening, I tried calling Jonah. He answered on the third ring. "How is Maya?" "She's confused and sad. She doesn't understand why Mommy isn't coming home." "Then let me come home. Let me explain to her that we can work this out." "Can we work it out, Lysandra? Because from where I sit, you're still defending your relationship with Felix. You're still claiming you did nothing wrong. You're still blaming everyone else for the consequences of your choices." "I'm trying to understand what you want from me." "I wanted a wife who prioritized our marriage over outside validation. I wanted a partner who considered our family's well-being before pursuing emotional connections with other men. I wanted someone who would choose us over the thrill of being desired by someone new. I never stopped choosing us. You stopped choosing us the moment you let Felix put his hands on you at our anniversary dinner. You stopped choosing us when you started meeting him secretly for coffee. You stopped choosing us when you defended him more passionately than you ever defended our marriage. Those weren't choices against our marriage. They were choices for my own happiness and self-worth. And that's exactly the problem. You chose your individual happiness over our collective well-being. You chose your self-worth over our family's stability. You chose feeling desired by Felix over being committed to me. I wanted to argue, but something in his calm certainty made me pause. Was he right? Had I been so focused on feeling valued and appreciated that I'd lost sight of what I was risking? "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you decide who you want to be. The divorce is going through. That's not negotiable. But you can still be a good mother to Maya. You can still rebuild your career and your reputation. You can still learn from this experience. And what about us? What about 10 years of marriage? Those 10 years led us here, Lysandra, to a place where you were more excited about another man's attention than your husband's love. To a place where you were willing to humiliate our family for the sake of feeling special. That's not a marriage worth saving. After he hung up, I sat in my hotel room reviewing everything that had happened. The anniversary dinner, the photos, the social media posts, the coffee meetings with Felix, the defensive reactions to everyone's concerns. For the first time, I tried to see it from Jonah's perspective. What would I have felt if he'd spent our anniversary dinner flirting with another woman? What would I have thought if he'd started meeting a female colleague for secret coffee dates? How would I have reacted if he'd defended those relationships more passionately than he defended our marriage? The answers were uncomfortable. I would have been hurt, angry, betrayed. I would have seen it as a fundamental violation of our marriage vows, even if nothing physical happened. But I'd been so focused on my own needs, my own feelings of being unappreciated and taken for granted, that I'd ignored how my actions were affecting the people I claimed to love most. My phone buzzed with a final calendar alert. Tomorrow, new beginning or final ending, your choice. For once, I didn't try to delete it. Maybe it was time to stop running from consequences and start facing them honestly. Saturday morning arrived grey and cold, matching my mood as I prepared for my first supervised visitation with Maya. The court-appointed supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, met me at a family centre downtown, a sterile building designed for broken families to maintain connections under watchful eyes. Maya ran to me when she saw me, and I held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Mummy, why can't you come home?" she asked, her 7-year-old voice breaking my heart. "Mummy and Daddy are having some grown-up problems right now, sweetheart, but I love you so much and that will never change." "Is it because of the man from your work? Daddy said you became friends with him and forgot about us." The innocence of her question cut deep. Even Maya could see what I'd been denying, that my focus had shifted away from my family. We spent 2 hours colouring, playing games and talking. Maya showed me new drawings she'd made, including one labelled Before, showing our family happy together, and another labelled After, showing me and Felix on one side, Jonah and Maya on the other, with a big black line dividing us. "I drew what I saw," she explained matter-of-factly. "You and the workman looked happy together. Me and Daddy looked sad together." Mrs. Patterson took notes throughout our visit, documenting our interactions for the court. When our time ended, Maya clung to me, crying as I had to leave her again. "When can I see you again, Mummy?" "Soon, baby. Very soon." But I didn't know if that was true. The temporary orders allowed supervised visits twice a week, but only if I could afford the supervision fees, and only if the court deemed it in Maya's best interest. That afternoon, I drove past our apartment building one more time. Through the lobby windows, I could see Jonah and Maya coming back from somewhere, both carrying grocery bags. They looked like they were managing fine without me, maybe even better than when I'd been there creating tension and drama. My phone rang. It was Felix. "Lysandra, I heard about the visitation today. How did it go?" "It was heartbreaking. Why are you calling?" "I wanted you to know that my wife filed for divorce yesterday. She's citing your relationship as evidence of adultery." "Our relationship? We never had a physical relationship." Try explaining that to a divorce attorney. The photos, the text messages, the secret meetings. It all looks like an affair to everyone except us. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying that whatever we had, whatever we thought we were doing, it's destroyed both our marriages. Was it worth it?" I couldn't answer that question. The attention, the validation, the excitement I'd felt with Felix. It had seemed so important at the time. But sitting in a hotel room, banned from my own home, allowed to see my daughter only under supervision, it was hard to argue that any of it had been worth the cost. My attorney says your husband's evidence is being shared with my wife's attorney. They're building coordinated cases. Coordinated cases? They're sharing information to strengthen both divorce proceedings. Your husband documented everything. Times, places, conversations, financial records. It's all being used against both of us now. After Felix hung up, I realized the full scope of what Jonah had orchestrated. He hadn't just been collecting evidence for our divorce. He'd been building a case that would destroy both marriages involved in what he saw as my betrayal. That evening, I got a call from Nate at work. "Girl, you need to see the news. This thing has gone national." National? Business journals are picking up the story. Non-profit executives' public affair leads to coordinated divorce strategy. They're calling it a cautionary tale about social media and workplace relationships. I found the articles online. My name, my photo, and details of my marriage's collapse were being dissected by strangers across the country. The comment sections were brutal. Thousands of people weighing in on my character, my choices, my fitness as a mother. Some comments were supportive. Women deserve to have friendships and feel valued, but most were harshly critical. This is what happens when people prioritize social media validation over family. Poor husband and daughter, they deserved better. Actions have consequences. The articles included quotes from unnamed sources at the non-profit describing my behavior as increasingly erratic and attention-seeking. Board members expressed concerns about professional boundaries and organizational reputation. Even worse, the business journals had obtained copies of the divorce filings, making the evidence of my relationship with Felix public record. Photos from our coffee meetings, text message excerpts, social media posts, everything was laid out for public consumption and judgment. My phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, bloggers, and podcasters wanting interviews. I ignored them all, but the story continued growing without my participation. Sunday brought the final blow. My mother called to tell me that Rosa, Jonah's mother, had reached out to express her support for his decision. She says Jonah tried to save the marriage, but you were too focused on this other man to notice your family falling apart. That's not true. I was trying to save myself, to not lose who I am in marriage. And who are you, Lysandra? Because from the outside, you look like someone who threw away a good marriage for the attention of a man who abandoned you the moment things got difficult. The accusation stung, because it was accurate. Felix had indeed disappeared as soon as the consequences became real. All his talk about appreciating complex, intelligent women had evaporated when his own marriage was threatened. I made mistakes, Mum, but Jonah's revenge is destroying my entire life. Revenge? Mija, this isn't revenge. This is consequences. Jonah documented your choices and let you face the natural results of those choices. That's not revenge. That's accountability. Monday morning, I received an email from the non-profit's board of directors. My employment was being terminated effective immediately due to conduct detrimental to organizational reputation and mission. The decision was final and non-appealable. With no job, no home, and no access to my daughter, except under supervision, I realized I was facing a complete life reconstruction. Everything I'd built over the past decade was gone, destroyed by choices I'd convinced myself were harmless. I called David Chen, my attorney, to discuss next steps. "I've been reviewing your case over the weekend," he said. "I strongly recommend accepting the divorce terms as proposed. Fighting will only make things worse and more expensive." "What about custody? What about my daughter?" "The current arrangement gives you a path back to shared custody if you can demonstrate stability. Get a job, get a permanent residence, complete some counseling sessions, and you can petition for increased visitation in 6 months. And if I fight now, you'll lose. You'll spend money you don't have, and you'll look vindictive and unstable to the court. That won't help your custody case." Tuesday afternoon, I signed the divorce agreement. 10 years of marriage dissolved with a signature on legal documents that chronicled my betrayal in clinical detail. The final calendar alert appeared on my phone that evening. Chapter closed. New story begins tomorrow. This time, I didn't try to delete it. I was finally ready to face whatever came next, even if I'd lost everything that had mattered to me before. Wednesday morning, I stood on the courthouse steps clutching the signed divorce agreement, waiting for Jonah to arrive for the final hearing. The building loomed above me, its granite columns and imposing architecture making me feel small and exposed. Local media had gotten wind of the hearing time, and a small crowd of reporters waited nearby with cameras and notebooks. What had started as a private marital dispute had become a public spectacle about modern marriage, social media, and professional boundaries. Jonah arrived at exactly 9:45 a.m., 15 minutes before our scheduled hearing. He looked calm and composed in his dark suit, carrying a leather briefcase that I knew contained months of carefully documented evidence. Maya wasn't with him. She was at school, protected from this final scene of our family's dissolution. "Lysandra," he said quietly as he approached. "Jonah." I wanted to say more, to make one final plea for reconciliation, but the words wouldn't come. Everything that needed to be said had been said in legal documents and supervised conversations. We entered the courthouse together, walking through security and metal detectors like strangers. In the elevator, Jonah spoke for the first time. "I brought something for you," he said, pulling a manila envelope from his briefcase. Inside was my favorite coffee mug, the blue ceramic one with "World's Best Mom" that Maya had given me for Mother's Day 2 years ago. But now it was sealed in a clear evidence bag with a label reading Exhibit A. "Why?" I asked, confused. "It's from the morning you first told me about Felix. You were drinking coffee from this mug when you said he made you feel special in ways I never did. I saved it exactly as it was that day. Your lipstick still on the rim, coffee stains inside. It became my reminder of the moment I knew our marriage was over." The gesture was so coldly methodical, so perfectly symbolic of how he'd approached our entire divorce. Every detail preserved, every moment documented, every piece of evidence carefully catalogued for maximum impact. "You've been planning this since that morning." "I've been preparing for this since that morning. There's a difference. I hoped you'd choose differently, but I prepared for the possibility that you wouldn't." The hearing itself was brief and anticlimactic. Judge Martinez reviewed the uncontested divorce agreement, confirmed that both parties understood the terms, and signed the final decree. 10 years of marriage officially ended with a rubber stamp and a filing fee. "The divorce is granted," Judge Martinez announced. "Custody and support arrangements, as outlined in the agreement, are now in effect. Next case." Outside the courthouse, reporters immediately surrounded us. Microphones were thrust in our faces, cameras flashed, and questions were shouted from all directions. "Mrs. Vey, do you have any regrets about the choices that led to this divorce? Mr. Vey, was this revenge for your wife's public humiliation? How do you respond to critics who say you destroyed your family for social media attention?" Jonah walked through the crowd without speaking, his face impassive, but I found myself stopping, facing the cameras, finally ready to speak honestly about what had happened. "I made terrible mistakes," I said, my voice shaking. "I prioritized my own need for validation over my family's well-being. I convinced myself that emotional intimacy with another man was harmless because it wasn't physical. I was wrong." "Do you blame your husband for the way he handled the divorce?" "I blame myself for creating a situation that required him to protect himself and our daughter. He documented my choices and let me face the natural consequences. That's not revenge, that's accountability." "What's next for you?" "I'm going to focus on rebuilding my relationship with my daughter and learning from the mistakes that cost me everything I valued most." The reporters seemed surprised by my honesty. They'd expected defensiveness, blame-shifting, or victim narratives. Instead, I was finally taking responsibility for the choices that had led us to this courthouse. As the media crowd dispersed, Jonah approached me one final time. "That was the first completely honest thing you've said throughout this entire process," he said. "It's the first time I've been able to see clearly what actually happened." "And what did happen from your perspective?" "I got so focused on feeling special and appreciated that I forgot I already had someone who loved me unconditionally. I chose temporary validation over permanent commitment. I prioritized my individual happiness over our collective well-being." Jonah nodded slowly. "That's exactly what happened." "Is there any chance—" "No," he said firmly but not unkindly. "Trust, once broken this completely, can't be repaired, but you can still be a good mother to Maya. You can still rebuild your life and learn from this experience." He handed me the evidence bag containing my coffee mug. "This doesn't belong in my office safe anymore. The case is closed." As Jonah walked away, I stood alone on the courthouse steps, holding the mug that had witnessed the beginning of my marriage's end. The ceramic was cold through the plastic bag, but I could still see the faint outline of my lipstick on the rim, a ghostly reminder of the woman I'd been before I chose validation over love. My phone buzzed with a notification. Felix had sent a text. "Saw the news coverage. My divorce was finalized yesterday too. Maybe we can finally be together now." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Felix represented everything I'd lost myself pursuing: temporary excitement, shallow validation, the illusion of being special to someone who barely knew the real me. Instead, I called David Chen, my attorney, to discuss the next steps for rebuilding my life: stable housing, steady employment, counseling sessions, and supervised visitation with Maya until I could prove I'd learned from my mistakes. The business journals had already published follow-up articles about the divorce's conclusion. Comment sections were filled with reactions ranging from sympathy to condemnation to grudging respect for my final courthouse statement. But the opinions of strangers no longer mattered. What mattered was earning back my daughter's trust, rebuilding my professional reputation, and learning to find self-worth in commitment rather than conquest. 6 months later, I was living in a small apartment across town, working as a program coordinator for a different nonprofit, and seeing Maya twice a week without supervision. The visitation schedule was slowly expanding as I demonstrated stability and growth. Jonah had kept his word about focusing on Maya's well-being rather than punishing me. He never spoke badly about me to our daughter, never interfered with our rebuilding relationship, never used Maya as a weapon in ongoing conflicts. Felix had moved to another state after losing both his marriage and his board position. His attempts to contact me had eventually stopped when I made it clear that our connection had been built on mutual selfishness rather than genuine compatibility. The coffee mug sat on my kitchen counter now, no longer sealed in an evidence bag, but still carrying the weight of what it represented. Every morning when I drank from it, I remembered the cost of choosing temporary validation over permanent love. The calendar alerts had stopped appearing on my phone. There were no more mysterious meetings, no more paper drops, no more countdowns to consequences I couldn't see coming. Instead, there were therapy appointments, parent-teacher conferences, and slow progress toward rebuilding what I'd destroyed. Maya was thriving in the stability Jonah provided, but she was also learning to trust me again during our visits. We talked honestly about what had happened, in age-appropriate ways, and she was beginning to understand that people could make terrible mistakes and still be worthy of love and forgiveness. "Mummy," she said during one of our Saturday visits, "Daddy says you're learning to be better. Is that true?" "Yes, sweetheart. Mummy made some very bad choices that hurt our family, but I'm working hard to make better choices now." "Will you ever live with us again?" "No, baby. Daddy and I can't be married anymore because of the mistakes I made. But I will always be your mommy, and I will always love you, and I will always work to be the best mommy I can be." Maya nodded solemnly, then returned to her coloring book. She was drawing a new family picture, one where Jonah and I lived in separate houses, but were both smiling, both present in her life, both committed to her happiness, even if we couldn't be committed to each other. The divorce had been finalized in record time due to the uncontested agreement and comprehensive documentation. Felix's marriage had ended just as quickly, and he'd been terminated from his position amid concerns about professional conduct. I'd moved 2 states away initially, but eventually returned to be closer to Maya. And in Jonah's home office, in the safe where he'd once kept evidence of my betrayal, there was now only one item: my coffee mug from that morning, when everything changed, never washed, labeled Exhibit A, as a reminder that actions have consequences, choices have costs, and love, once broken, leaves permanent scars. But scars can be reminders of lessons learned rather than wounds that never heal. And sometimes, the end of one story becomes the beginning of another, one built on truth instead of deception, accountability instead of blame, and the hard-won wisdom that comes from losing everything